I feel impelled to speak today in a language that, in a sense, is new. One which I, who have spent so much of my life in the military profession, would have preferred never to use. That new language is the language of atomic warfare. The atomic age has moved forward at such a pace that every citizen of the world should have some comprehension, at least in comparative terms, of the extent of this development, of the utmost significance to every one of us. Clearly, if the peoples of the world are to conduct an intelligent search for peace, they must be armed with the significant facts of today's existence.
In the time between now and HR, I'd like to show you around, if I may, and introduce you to some of the people connected with this operation, and in general, piece together the events which have brought us to this point. To start off, I'd like to show you something over here. You realize there are many miles of ocean between us and Eniwetok Atoll. To know what's going on back at the atoll, these antennas are receiving televised signals and are giving our men here a second-by-second account of what's happening on Shot Island. The television receivers are in here, in the control room. Well, this is it. This is the control room. I'd like to have you meet Mr. Stan Burris, the commander of the scientific task group. Oh, Stan, I wonder if you could tell us something about the operations that go on in this room.
Sure, I'd be glad to. The screens you see in front of you enable us to monitor the timing and firing system. If you will look close, you will see that it is now 55 minutes before HR. As time clicks off, more and more lights come into operation. This is the 1-minute light, 30 second, 15, 5, 1 through firing. This diagram will give you a general idea of the whole setup. Data from the sequence timer is piped over to a display panel. This kind of display panel is new to atomic test work because of the large number of remote control and metering problems encountered in this operation. For one thing, the master timing and metering apparatus is located next door to the shot cab rather than being placed some 20 miles away on Parry Island as is usually done. This close view is possible, of course, because the lens of a television camera, rather than human eyes, is watching events.
So that's the flow. From timer on through to display panel, picked up by a television camera and relayed on out to the Estes. A very ingenious arrangement. But what happens if you have to stop the firing mechanism, or can you stop it?
We can stop it all right if we have to. We have a radio link direct to the firing panel and the shot cab. If we have to stop the shot, we simply push this button.
Just a simple flip of the wrist, huh?
That's right, but a lot of work goes down the drain. You understand we don't want to stop this thing unless it's absolutely essential.
No, I can understand that. Say, I was out on deck when you fellas returned. Well, that is when the firing party returned. What happened out there on Shot Island?
If you'll excuse me, I suggest you talk to Colonel Lunger about that. I have a timing signal coming up.
All right. So then, Dick, the firing party's big job is to see to last-minute details of arming and firing and to make sure that the Shot Island is secure.
That's the broad brush of it, yes.
Not long ago at Los Alamos, I was talking to Dr. Alvin C. Graves, head of the test division there. He's on board now in Flag Plot as the scientific deputy to the task force commander. He's one of the men who can tell us about the thinking behind this operation. The shot island is about over in there?
That's right. It's generally north and west of us. For the past half hour, the ship has been headed directly toward the shot island and will continue to do so until shot time.
You know, there's one thing I can't quite put together. That's this business of success or failure. I've heard there's a 50% chance of its failing. Now, this low margin of success wasn't true on the other shots, was it?
No, it wasn't.
We must take risks. Calculated risk, it is true, but risk nevertheless. According to the presidential directive, we must ascertain if a hydrogen bomb is feasible and do this in the highest possible speed. Here is what I think we must do. We must set up a special staff under Dr. Marshall Holloway, reporting directly to my office. He will receive from the theoretical division the theoretical designs of such a system, have them fabricated, and shipped to Eniwetok. There, they'll be taken by Dr. Graves and J Division and tested. It must be recognized that we're taking great chances, a great gamble. But a gamble, while there's a possibility of failure, nevertheless there's a possibility of great gains. Eniwetok will become our theoretical laboratory rather than a proving ground.
And that's the way it is today. We're taking a gamble.
I see that now. But then the uneasy state of the world puts everything on a gambling basis, I guess.
Yes, but not as much of a gamble as you might think. Take that man over there. He and his company have put a great deal of thought into the engineering and design of Mike. Well, see you later.
So long, Doctor, and thanks a lot. The test islands for Mike are located at the top, or the northern sector, of Eniwetok Atoll, some 25 miles from Perry and Eniwetok, the two base islands of this atoll proving grounds. There are three main islands making up the test site. These are Elugelab, Teeter, and Bogan. In the early months, Elugelab was just another small, naked island of the atoll. But by midsummer, it began to look like the thing it was selected for, a shot island. Actually, the cab, so called because it houses the weapon, is not a cab at all, but a building set flush to the ground. It has all the earmarks of a common workshed, but in reality is a laboratory building set on a Pacific atoll. This, as you have probably gathered, is joint operations. All atomic test operations in the Pacific so far have been run under a joint task force kind of setup. Operation Ivy is using the same organizational structure as Greenhouse. 4 task groups: scientific, Army, Navy, and Air Force. Members of these groups are here now, sifting and coordinating the many details of this joint operation and passing key information topsides to the command level. The Army is the executive agent on this operation, just as the Air Force was on Greenhouse and the Navy on Crossroads before that. At this point in our story, it's necessary to understand the effort behind the collecting of measurement data. For what good is a test unless we can learn, can profit from the experience? Highly specialized, sometimes costly instruments help scientists bring home this vital data. An outstanding example of such specialization is the use of a helium atmosphere box by the Naval Research Laboratory. The plywood tube, looking like a train of boxcars, runs from the shot island across the causeways to a detection station on Bogan, a distance of nearly 2 miles. In addition to the diagnostic kind of measurement, many studies are being run on the effects expected from a high-order detonation. The story of heat or thermal radiation needs continued study. The ever-interesting history of neutrons will be recorded. What amounts of external neutrons are present? And what is their energy distribution? Because of the expected size of the shot, the fallout problem is being extensively analyzed. That's General Clarkson, the task force commander, and General Walk, chief of staff. The scientific deputy, Dr. Graves, you've already met. Captain Paul is deputy for naval operations, and General Wise, deputy for the Air Force. The problem this time is especially acute because this entire area of the Pacific is subject to radiological fallout. And this area is inhabited by some 20,000 people, plus, of course, the ships of this task force. In less than a minute, you will see the most powerful explosion ever witnessed by human eyes. The blast will come out of the horizon just about there. And this is the significance of the moment. This is the first full-scale test of a hydrogen device. If the reaction goes, we're in the thermonuclear era. For the sake of all of us, and for the sake of our country, I know that you join me in wishing this expedition well.
It is now 30 seconds to zero time. Put on goggles or turn away. Do not remove goggles or face burst until 10 seconds after the first light.
Minus 10 seconds. 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, T0.
The Navy Task Group, commanded by Rear Admiral Wilkins, has the problem of providing the means to re-enter shortly after the blast to get exposed film, samples, and other scientific data. Since no land mass is available, the problem is complicated. Re-entry must be from a ship. Further, fallout will be very high, starting at about N plus 1 hour. Helicopters must get in quickly and get out again before that hour is up.
Approaching ground zero, coming up on Bogon. The detection station on Bogon appears to be in good shape. No visible sign of plywood tube. All test islands seem to be swept clean. Ugelab is completely gone. Nothing there but water, and what appears to be a deep crater. Water dark blue in color.
Nothing but water. An island completely erased.
This is the largest fireball ever produced. At its maximum, it measures about 3 1/4 miles in diameter. Compared to the skyline of New York, this means that with the Empire State Building as 0 point, the Mike fireball would extend downtown to Washington Square and uptown to Central Park. In other words, the fireball alone would engulf about 1/4 of the island of Manhattan. The tremendous upsurge of air from the detonation rapidly pushes up the Mike cloud. Again, nothing of this height and width has ever before been witnessed. If the picture is stopped at this point in the cloud's growth, the height of the cloud is approximately 40,000 feet. This means that 32 Empire State Buildings at 1,250 feet per building could be piled one on top of the other before they would attain the cloud's height at this time, roughly 2 minutes after zero. Some 10 minutes later, the cloud approaches its maximum. At this time, the mushroom portion of the cloud has pushed up to around 10 miles and spreads out along the base of the stratosphere to a width of about 100 miles, while the stem itself is pushed upward deep into the stratosphere to a height of about 25 miles. The results of this tremendous power can be shown at the atoll. Here is an aerial photo of the test area of the atoll before the blast. And here is the same area after the blast, showing the crater caused by Mike. The outlined island in the center is former Elugelab, the Zero Island. Sections of the islands on either side have been chopped off. The crater is roughly a mile in diameter, when it is illustrated that some 14 Pentagon buildings could be comfortably accommodated in this hole. The size of the Mike crater becomes more real. In profile, the crater gradually slopes down to a maximum depth of some 175 feet, or equivalent to the height of a 17-story building. The lateral destructive effects are the greatest yet observed from a single explosive device. Without getting into the areas of target evaluation or secondary effects, it can be safely assumed that there was complete annihilation within a radius of 3 miles, or out to and including all of Engebi, that there was severe to moderate damage out to 7 miles or down to Ruggiero, and that light damage extended as far as 10 miles or down to Runnet. Relating this area of damage to a city like Washington, D.C. would present a picture something like this. With the capital as 0 point, there would be complete annihilation west to Arlington Cemetery, east to the Anacostia River, north to the Soldiers' Home, and south to Bowling Field. Complete annihilation, and that is mentioning merely the primary damage.
What you have just seen was an awesome turning point in history, a development affecting not only the future of humanity, but the security of our nation, the safety of our communities, and the well-being of our homes and our families. Consequently, our national civil defense effort must concern itself with 3 major factors. 1, intensified civil defense preparations to reduce the loss of life, property, and production. 2, greater personal preparations for your recovery and for that of your family. 3, our moral determination to fight back and to win if war should come, even in spite of our efforts for peace. 2 courses of action must be followed on the long and difficult road to peace. First, unceasing efforts to reach international agreement upon such a sound proposal as President Eisenhower made to the United Nations for the constructive use of atomic energy in the service of all mankind. This requires better and deeper understanding of the problems it faces upon the part of the American public. Second, prudence dictates steadfast preparation by us at home to back up our president as he goes into the councils of the world in order that he may lead from strength, strength based upon an assurance that the American people are prepared to withstand any assault. This is no simple thing to do. It requires personal dedication and diligence in civil defense as a safeguard until that day when a just and lasting peace may come to the world. This we can do. This we must and we will do as Americans, determined to protect and advance America and free people everywhere.